Um, Steve, welcome. We're in it again. This is Inspire Life and Leadership Conversations that Go Deeper with Steve and Drew. We are moving towards the rest of the acronym. We've kind of hopefully closed the chapter on I for identity and understood that better. And then now we're moving into the N of navigate. And Steve, when we think of navigate, and I guess I first question to you is what comes up for you when you think of navigate?
The thing that comes to my mind is the captain on the bridge of his ship, um, and being able to take in all the information that that captain needs to safely navigate that ship to wherever it's going, whether it's a cargo ship or a warship or um, an ocean liner. Think of the Titanic. It's really being able to navigate that ship and safely navigate that ship. And we're talking to leaders, so navigate their entire team safely to where they're headed. And I think that's kind of in my mind. We talked a little earlier about what's the goal for this session. What's the goal for N? And the goal in my mind, it's how do we get these guys to be really comfortable and really confident as they're navigating their ship, as they're navigating their teams. That's where my head's at. What's your thoughts on that?
Well, I was thinking this too, and it came up, the sextant, the thing that
Hmm.
the old navigators, literally
Yeah.
navigators of ships, would use to look at the stars and measure where to go, where's north,
Yeah.
where's south, where are we going? And true north, trying to find true north is always the starting point.
Right.
And I hope that the identity stuff, which we will bring back in, will be the sextant or the tools that we can use to make sure that we're navigating. And again, the definition we're using for navigate is lead from our true self.
Right.
Lead to our, use our true north to navigate the ship in the right direction. And that the Daniel Harkavy definition of leadership, which is the decisions we make and the influence we have. And if we use our identity, our doing and being of who we are to make our decisions, then that's the best we can do. That's the best we can ask
Yep.
for.
Yep. Agreed.
Um, what and I guess with that in mind, the idea comes up is like, really emphasize always start with identity.
Yep. Yep. Yep.
Always check in with yourself and say, what's, let me remind myself of what's the being of identity? Am I a beloved child of God, or am I just getting myself grounded in I have inherent worth
Right.
because of I'm a unique entity, as simple as that.
Yep.
And start there and then branch out with the doing of identity, which we talked mostly about
Yep.
in the last episodes, is all that stuff we talked about, values, what is and isn't our identity with all the false identities and all that stuff. And I think that that gives us a lot of tools and a lot of substance to how to move forward.
Yeah, I think just to jump on the analogy, it clears the fog out of the way, right? The
Mm,
saboteurs that were out there as the fog, it helps you clear the fog out of the way to make the good decision. So, yeah, I love the analogy and where we're going with this thing. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
When you lead and when you've made decisions, do you look at those three circles kind of like do you look at true self and false self, or how do you?
When is when I would make decisions, I would always ask myself, am I doing the right thing?
Mm,
Especially with the big decisions. And that would help me, honestly, it would point me right back to my values.
mm,
That's what that question evokes in my mind. It may evoke something else for others. But that's where it steers me as to what are my values. I had strong values around leadership. I had strong values around team. I had strong values around the company. I had strong values around the customers. I had strong values around, you know, the people who were in my stead, and it would always drive me down into those values. So it really helped me. Um, I want to say get away from the saboteurs that were in, you know, that were what haunting me at that point. They were still there when I would get to decisions. Oftentimes, then the saboteurs could show up and critique, you know, the critiques, the two old guys in the Muppet Show would sit there and critique the decisions. Um, you know, and those were my saboteurs who were in there critiquing decisions and making me feel a little unsure of myself, if you will, standing on the bridge of the ship. Am I making the right decision or am I not making the right decision? But that question of, am I doing the right thing, always drove me down to what are my values. And I throw that out there just, you know, some people that may be what can drive them into their values. There may be another question that other people need to ask themselves of, or simply, hey, what do my values say I should do? One of my
Mm,
last bosses, he was wonderful at that. Um, we had a chart up on his board of here are the things we're going to accomplish this year. Here is what we said we're all about. And then he would have things that would come into his office and he would literally, you know, take a paper copy of the email and walk it up to the board and go, you know, here's the matrix. This is the decision we should be making.
mm,
But that driving yourself back to those core values, which drive you back to your core self, which drive you back to
yeah.
your true self, so key. Yeah.
And what is, if you don't mind me asking, what is one of your core values and how might you have used it in making decisions?
Um, I think I have a core value that says the team comes before the individual.
Mm,
Um, and when I decided to retire, um, I bring this one up because there were a lot of saboteurs that were in the same space as I was making the decision. But I had been in my position of leadership for 10 years. And I personally, you know, another belief I have is that after 6 or 7 years in leadership, you need to change positions. Your leadership gets stale. Um,
mm,
I truly, honestly believe that. And I was looking and evaluating my team and saying, you know what, to get them to the level that they need to get, um, I need to change leadership within this team. And I'm gonna go ahead and retire, and work really hard at helping get who I think is the right backfill for this team. So I worked hard to do that. Did I have saboteurs going in my head that, oh, you're not enough, you're this, you're that? Yeah. But when I got to the peace with my decision, and that's kind of how you know you're there, um, there's a peace that comes where your values line up, your gut lines up, your head lines up. There's a peace when
mm,
you make those decisions that you're following your true self. When you
mm,
make decisions that aren't following your true self, you know, you toss and turn over that are those kind of decisions. There's another one that's a really simple one that I had to make with my siblings and my immediate family. You know, they were trying to get together for Thanksgiving, and I had already had a commitment with my wife, my son, his his wife, and um, you know, and her family. So we had a commitment that we said we were going to do this, and I had to turn down my siblings, and honestly caught a lot of heck for turning
mm,
them down. Um, but you know, I have a strong value that says family first, and a strong value, and that strong value says, you know, that's my wife, that's my son, that's my daughter-in-law, is my immediate family, and my siblings are kind of a secondary.
Mm.
You know, they're important. Are they important? Absolutely. Do I love them? Absolutely. But in terms of hierarchy, I had to make the decision for my family and for my commitment. And there was no place in there where there was a natural place where I could loop it out. If I said, okay, it's Nikki and I going down to for this, then she wouldn't be spending time with Michael. And if we pulled Clara and Michael in with us, they would be splitting away from, her dad and his in-laws. So, we made the decision to stay. Yeah.
Yeah, beautiful. I mean, great illustrations.
Yeah.
I was trying to think of my illustrations are more, I guess, more granular. The thing that popped into my head is I'm much better, obviously, much better version of myself when I'm focusing on when I'm making decisions and influencing from the true self space.
Yep.
And like you said, it does feel better. Like there's a feel to it, right? There's a
Yep.
piece about it, there's a feel to
Yep.
it. Even if it doesn't work out right, you still can look back and say, I was honoring my values and I was leaning into who I am.
Exactly.
But I use the word granular because I'm thinking of how to use how to be in the sense of true self on a daily basis. Like, what does that look like so that we can be intentional about taking the things we've learned around our identity and applying them uh, minute by minute, day, hour by hour, day by day, week by week, which
Yep.
I think is largely going to be some of the stuff we talk about and unpack throughout this section of what this
Yep.
of the podcast, right?
Yeah. 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 But they, it's this becomes a practiced behavior that you get
Mm,
better at. And I think oftentimes it starts with the big decisions because those are the ones that need more time. And
mm.
as you practice this, you kind of work your way into the smaller decisions, if you will. It starts to impact the smaller decisions at the same time. If you paused everything and made every decision, if somebody's going down this path and you're like, okay, I'm going to make every decision that from here on forward this way, my recommendation would be first pick your big decisions that you got to do for sure, and then second, pick three or four little ones during the week that you use this on so that you get practice, and then you eventually build this muscle up that starts to become natural to you.
Well, and you model beautifully three things that popped into my mind. One that I tell leaders all the time that they have to do, but they don't, is TIME.
Yeah.
Take the time to pause and slow down and sit in some silence so your brain can catch up and say, okay, I have a decision to make.
Yeah.
What do I need to be aware of? And the two things that you shared that you needed to be aware of were one, true self. What are my values? What is that going to look like? And then the second thing you mentioned is false self. You know, what are those voices in my head that I need to be able to navigate or be aware of? So I thought that was beautiful. You shared with us, maybe without knowing it, a kind of a rhythm or a pattern
Yeah.
of what this looks like.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Thank you.
I mean, not to get on a, soapbox, but just the idea of, are we blocking off time in our busy business schedule to just think? You know, I mean,
Yeah.
you know, Daniel Harkavy, who's, a great mentor of mine, is, yeah, every Friday he blocks 2 to 4 hours off of just thinking time. And
Yep.
maybe that's a call out to say part of this process is you've got to find some blocked off time to process, to pause, to think,
Yep.
and then to act.
Yep. I did exactly the same thing as Daniel at the end of my career.
Mm.
Probably the last 3 or 4 years of my career, I would block off from 1 o'clock on Friday afternoon till 5 o'clock on Friday afternoon and hold that space. Try the best I could to hold that space, um, so that I had thinking time. And I wanted to create the space, but two, I also knew that at the end of the week, my brain was going to be tired.
Mm.
and that it was going into a weekend, and that I would could mull over these ideas. I could get to my core values. I could think about strategically the things that I needed to think about, and then I would could let it mull over the weekend and make the decision on a Monday or something like that.
Mm.
But I would use that time on Friday afternoons for thinking time and slowing down, and it was really effective, quite honestly. Um,
Were you during that time digital or analog? Meaning, were you typing out notes or were you writing them by hand?
uh, um, analog. For me, what worked really well was the white. I had a big whiteboard in my office, and
Mm.
I would sit at my chair and I'd walk up to the whiteboard and I would, scribe on the whiteboard or doodle on the whiteboard or draw a cartoon on the whiteboard or a flow chart or something. But having that whiteboard that I interacted with was really cool. And I find and totally different thing, but I find writing by hand makes my memory remember what I'm doing versus if I'm typing, I don't have the same, it doesn't make the same neural connection as writing does. The writing really, really helped me to do it, whether it was cursive or stick or like I said, a lot of times it was, graphs and bar charts and flow charts and all kinds of stuff that I was putting on the board. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
I wasn't sure how you would answer, and I think that the audience might go, "Oh, what do a bunch of old people know?" But the reality is, I
Yeah,
think the reason I asked is I think there is a lot of support for the brain chemistry being healthier and happier when we go analog, when we start to write on
yeah,
paper and pen using a pen. And I think that that process is fallen out of favor. And I wanted to give a nod to anybody listening that get back into that,
yeah.
because that's part of our humanity and that's part of the way our brain works. And we have fallen in disarray when we allow typing and AI, et cetera, to take over.
Yeah, I see that very much in the thinking way of people. The same thing is that AI is they're giving up some thinking.
Yeah.
Um, when they use AI, they accept it and they don't critically analyze it very much. Um, the other thing that and I get the value that they want to go after. If it's digital, it's so easy to share. It's so quick to share and you can communicate it really well. And that's what I love about digital. But there are other tools to digitally capture the analog and send it
Hmm.
out,
Yeah.
and have it be clear. And the
Yeah.
tools are getting better and better all the time. So I'm with you. I would encourage people to go back to analog, and if they need to share it, capture it digitally and send it digitally, but create it analog.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. What else comes up for you as we're talking regarding Navigate?
My, this is like free association. Um, my my what it conjured up in me was safety. Um,
Hmm.
it- you know, I'm still with the captain at the ship, navigating the waters and um, making sure that your ship safely gets to the shore.
Mhm.
Um, you know, and people will go, and I don't want people to misread that or misunderstand that. You know, sometimes you got to get your ship to the shore really fast, or make some dramatic change because there's a storm coming out. There's a hurricane somewhere on the horizon, and you've got to, adapt and survive. There are those moments, so I don't want people to walk away from safety going, okay, only make safe decisions, because that's not really what we're talking about. We're talking about making the the best decisions that you can for your ship that you're navigating, given your current circumstances. And your current circumstances may be a hurricane on the horizon. Your current circumstances may be, you know, clear skies and fair weather. But you've got to have the information to make those decisions and to keep your company, your team safe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and I think you bring up a good point, and I immediately went to, being an ER doctor. I mean, I'm a much better
Indeed.
doctor as the years go by because of pattern recognition and being in troubled waters
Yep.
and knowing. And I think in leadership, it's the more that you have patterns and rituals that are embedded into your brain. I mean, I guess like, habits,
Yep.
um, or disciplines
Yep.
that you've created, then your brain's going to be more natural to make those decisions on the fly more readily, right?
Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
For sure. For
Yeah.
sure.
So I am reminded, I think the next place to go, at least for in my mind, is what are the sextants? What are the
Yeah.
different tools that we use or we've used to help us navigate these waters or to navigate in a accurate way our true self?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, we could get start. Anyone in particular come to mind as we keep going today?
Um, the one that I used a lot was I, PQ reps.
Mm,
Um,
that's funny you say that because that's the one I was going to start with, kind of indirectly.
you know, I would catch myself in meetings, with saboteurs and triggered, and the easiest thing for me to do in a meeting was, just take 10 seconds and wiggle my toes and be able to feel the toes in my shoes. Nobody notices it, nobody knows that you're doing it. And you're sitting there and you can sit there and wiggle your toes the whole time, and it always brought me back to center if I could do that for
Mm,
about 10 seconds. And that was a tool I often used. I had a buddy of mine, before I even heard of PQ reps, he would hold his breath. See how long he could hold his breath to bring himself back to reality. It was like, okay, I'm drifting off. I'm going to hold my breath for a little while and listen and see how long I can do it. But it would bring him back uh, to reality. It'd bring him back to the present. Yeah, yeah,
yeah. I think that's a great, I think, place and a segue for us to, pause for today and then move forward to the rest of the list of sextants of navigating tools. And my sense of it is, and broken record, but we know neurochemically, if we do an MRI, functional MRI in your brain now, and look at your amygdala, that stress center, and look at your advanced neocortex, the thinking centers of your brain, that if we get you to do PQ reps or mindfulness
yeah,
activities throughout the day, which are, checking in with your senses in any format, um, taking breaths that you're conscious of and aware of. Um, if you collect those throughout the day, then by the end of 6 weeks, if we re-image your MRI, there will indeed be an increase in your gray matter in
yeah,
that thinking part of your brain and a decrease in gray matter in that stress part of your brain. So it has a significant effect. It's muscle repetition. You're
yeah,
building muscle in your brain. And I think it is a way to quiet the saboteurs, to clear the headspace, and to make you think more clearly. And I think that's a great shout out as to like, that's the first sextant is to kind of
yeah,
get that straight.
yeah,
And like you said, you can use it all day long without anybody knowing.
yeah,
It's an inner um, exercise and muscle building for your brain.
for sure, for
Yeah.
sure.
Um, I think that's maybe we'll pause for today. And I think the rest of our navigate episodes will be filled, we'll unpack more of the sextants, the different things that you and I have done or we've researched
Yeah.
that give us this ability to ritualize. I don't know if that's the right word, and I guess repeat and embed into our lives so that we function out of our true self more often than not.
Yep. Absolutely.
And then I think, once we work our way through that, then I think the other part we'll get to hopefully is just, okay, let's you and I play out some scenarios, some real life scenarios, and how those worked. We did some of that today, but maybe
Yeah.
do some more of that. Um, and I think that would cover most of. I mean, that's probably we're probably looking at the next, half dozen episodes,
Sure.
and then, you know a teaser alert, and then we'll continue on with SPIRE, which is spiritual, physical, intellectual, relational, and emotional, which obviously these are all going to overlap, but that's our journey.
Yep.
And then once we finish Inspire, who knows where we'll go, but yeah.
Sounds great.
So yeah.
Yeah.
Any other closing thoughts? Does that sound like a plan?
Sounds like a plan. Just
Good.
wish everybody out there listening have a great week.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All
And
right.
try your little decisions. Try them.
Yeah.
Yep.
Try them with values and get
Yep.
your values clear. If you haven't
Yep.
done the exercise in the past, get them done. And then PQ reps or mindfulness, start working on that too. And
Yep.
I guess reach out to us anytime if you want to go deeper or if you have any thoughts or questions. So, yeah,
For sure. Cool. Thanks,
cool.
guys. See ya.